In our health videos, we have discussed the importance of physical activity in management of body composition. We learned that in the balance between energy expenditure and energy intake, physical activity is a key part of energy expenditure and is a great ally in the management of our stored body fat. In this video, we're going to move to a more important function of activity, the well-known relationship between activity and longevity. For centuries, men have suspected that those who were more physically active lived longer and better. It is only in the last 40 or 50 years, however, that scientific method has been used to attempt to prove this relationship. During the 1950s and 1960s, a brilliant Englishman named Jeremy Morris conducted sophisticated studies that seemed to prove that conductors on the London subway and bus system outlived those who drove the buses. Dr. Morris carefully looked at the difference in activity level between conductors and bus drivers and determined that there was a linear relationship between total activity and longevity. The improved longevity extended to various causes of death, revealing that both vascular disease mortality and cancer mortality were diminished with increased activity. At about the same time, Dr. Ralph Paffenbarger at Harvard University completed a study that would answer for all time the question of whether increased activity resulted in improved longevity. Dr. Paffenbarger and his associates decided to study the lives and activities of over 17,000 all-male Harvard alumni with annual questionnaires that asked the following 5 questions. Number 1, how many miles did you walk each day? How many stairs do you climb per day? How many hours of light sports like doubles tennis do you play in a week? How many hours of heavy sports like full-court basketball do you play each week? And how much do you weigh? Dr. Paffenbarger knew that a person's weight was one of the important determinants of calories expended in any activity over time. He and his associates therefore measured calories expended per week in the activities and then studied mortality versus calories of energy expended over more than 2 decades of life. Over that time, more than 1,400 of their subjects died, most of cardiovascular disease, but some of malignancies and accidents. The results of their study were dramatic. As you can see in the accompanying table, which appeared in the New England Journal of Medicine in March of 1986, there turned out to be a linear relationship between calories expended and reduction in mortality. The first 2,000 calories expended in walking, stair climbing, or sporting activities resulted in a linear 37% reduction in mortality. Walking, stair climbing, light sports, and heavy sports all led to substantial reductions in death rates when compared with those of individuals who were not very physically active. Even higher calories expended each week led to lower death rates, although the benefits were not as great as those gained with the first 2,000 calories expended per week. We should perhaps at this point give ourselves a reference point for calories generated by common types of activity. In walking 1 mile, a 150-pound person expends about 100 calories. A person who weighs 150 pounds would therefore need to walk about 20 miles to burn the 2,000 calories previously mentioned. As you can see in the table, Harvard grads who reached the 3,500 calorie per week exercise level had less than half the death rate of individuals who had little activity. This paper was incredibly important because it was the first large-scale study that seemed to prove without a doubt that activity is somehow protective of the health and life of us human beings. One other interesting point is notable on the table shown. When the Harvard alumni exercised in excess of 3,500 calories per week, their death rates actually began to rise. This suggested a point that has been noted in a number of studies since that done by Paffenbarger. Exercise is important as a protector against disease, but excess exercise may lead to increased death rates. Sadly, most individuals in our country don't come close to expending the initial 2,000 calories per week that are associated with linear decreases in death rate. Well, the next question that we might ask is, well, what type of exercise is best for enhancing longevity and decreasing mortality? The Paffenbarger study suggested that all types of activity were associated with longevity. There was a suggestion that those participating in light sports and heavy sports had a slight improvement in death benefit compared with walkers and stair climbers, but the mortality differences weren't very large. Several years later, after his initial study, Dr. Paffenbarger worked with Dr. Stephen Blair and Kenneth Cooper at the Cooper Clinic in Dallas, Texas, to try to determine whether the level of fitness of a person, as measured on a standard treadmill protocol, was correlated with longevity. For this study, they enrolled over 10,000 men and 3,000 women who came to the Cooper Clinic and completed a treadmill study. The participants were placed in 5 groups based on their level of fitness. This study asked the question, does a person who can exercise for 14 minutes on a treadmill outlive a person who can complete only 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 minutes on the same protocol? With careful effort to eliminate confounding variables like smoking and diabetes and high blood pressure, this study showed that very fit men have 1/4 the death rate from all causes of very unfit men. The data on fit versus unfit women was even more impressive. The most fit group of women had 1/5 the death rate of the least fit group of women when data were analyzed for nearly 15 years. I always teach that these 2 papers taken together tell us that we should do something active and we'll live longer. We should also do something that makes us work and sweat a little if we want to be very fit and achieve the maximum longevity benefit from exercise. This should send us to look at various types of activities and see how they influence overall fitness. Suffice it to say, all exercise leads to calorie expenditure, and all calorie expenditure up to some maximum benefit level leads to longer and better life. It's also true that some activities burn more calories than others, and that some types of activities lead to better fitness. Well, you might ask at this point, well, what is fitness anyway? It turns out that most professors of physical education divide fitness into 4 or 5 categories, all of which have been shown to enhance life quality and quantity. They are, number 1, strength. How strong are you? Number 2, flexibility. How flexible are you? Endurance. How many abdominal crunches can you do, or how do you live? Aerobic capacity. Number 4, can you carry a box up a hill? Number 5, balance. Can you stand on 1 foot for a while? All of these elements of fitness require work and practice, and all of them have been shown in good studies to enhance health in important ways. Let's discuss some key things to be learned about each of them. First, strength can be measured for any muscle, and any muscle from tiny ones in our hands to the large ones in our legs may be trained to be stronger. In general, it's true that stronger individuals are less likely to break bones and injure soft tissues than are weaker individuals, experiencing the same degree of trauma or falls and those things. You can imagine how many elderly men and women could have prevented hip fractures by having stronger quadriceps muscles in their legs or pectoral muscles to catch them when they fall. Muscular strength is in this sense strongly correlated with longevity. What about flexibility? Our ability to do good stretching of our hamstring muscles, our low back, and our calf muscles is important again for preventing injuries when we trip or are forced to make a sudden adjustment in a position during a fall. Flexibility can be trained and improved over time. I've seen hundreds of men and women enhance flexibility by doing yoga or various techniques of physical therapy. Endurance is a function of all of our muscles, but most authorities consider it a function of our back and abdominal muscles as they help us to maintain our posture and move through various ranges of motion each day. Abdominal crunches and sit-ups are activities that enhance abdominal endurance and improve our ability to maintain our normal daily activities. Aerobic function is the term originally used by Dr. Cooper and his associates when he was writing his first book on physical fitness. It addresses our capacity to walk or run uphill or to carry a heavy object over a distance. Aerobic function speaks of the ability of our heart, our lungs, our legs, and arms to do work at a steady pace for long periods of time. Long-distance walking, swimming, cycling, and horseback riding are all examples of aerobic experiences. Balance may be one of the most important functions for elderly men and women, and poor balance is one component of all falls. Strength is, of course, important in this regard, but balance is much more than just strength. Balance involves our being able to hold ourselves in position without wobbling from side to side. How many falls each year could be prevented if we all practiced balancing exercises? Lots, I'm sure. If exercise is such an important predictor of life quality and quantity, Why don't we all exercise more than we do? There are more reasons than you and I can count, but I believe that ultimately it comes down to whether we really believe that a given activity is really important to our health and whether it gives us a degree of joy in accomplishing it. I've told my patients for years that there are 5 major indicators of whether a given patient will start an activity and still be doing it again in a few years. These are, number 1, is the activity convenient? Is it close to my home or convenient to accomplish? Number 2, is the activity relatively inexpensive? Number 3, is the activity going to cause me an injury or hurt my bones or muscles? Number 4, is the activity worth it in terms of gains in aerobic capacity, strength, endurance, and flexibility? In other words, does it make me better for the time I spent? And number 5, is the activity at least a little fun or certainly not distasteful? If your activity meets these 5 criteria, you likely will still be doing it next year, and you likely would be well on your way to living longer and better because of exercise. Good luck with whatever you do to enhance activity and fitness. I'll look forward to seeing you again next time.